Yo, what's up you guys? This week is all about being smooth, like ultra buttery smooth, because we're using sliders. The reason why is because these are some of the most useful tools when it comes to B-roll or behind the scenes, or just generally adding a little bit of movement to a static shot. And realistically, out of the box, these are some of the easiest tools to use. So for that reason, I wanted to show you 3 movements. Anyone can do these. So let's talk about it. So the slider I got for this video is Newer's version of the motorized slider. My version specifically is a wired connection, and it's 80 centimeters. Now it comes in different variations and lengths and stuff like that. You can get a wireless connection if you want any of that. But for me, this is the one that was bang for the buck best. So it's the one that I'm highlighting for this video. And for me, this piece of gear is one of the best when it comes to creating a piece of content that I struggle with so much. And for me, that is taking a subject, whether it's an inanimate object or some sort of subject that's very still moving, and actually making that shot look dynamic and actually add to your video overall. So that's why I think the slider really enhances some of that content by making just subtle movements and kind of different shots that would normally just be locked off and kind of boring realistically. And it's for that reason why I wanted to give you guys this video on 3 super easy slider movements that'll help you straight out of the box, making those really boring static shots dynamic, cinematic, whatever you want to say. It'll make them look better. So let's talk about those 3. So the first one is the left to right or right to left pan. Now realistically, this is probably one of the most basic and probably the most overused in a lot of ways because it is so basic. Essentially, you're just setting the slider perpendicular to your subject and letting the camera pass back and forth a bunch of times. Because it's motorized, it will literally do everything for you. Once you have your A and B point kind of set, it'll just pass in front of your subject a bunch of times. Now, like I said, it's probably overused, especially for beginners because it's so easy to do. But for out of the box, it's probably one of the most useful because it will give you that transitional material to go from shot to shot. By that, I basically mean by transitioning left to right, your next shot can be in that same direction. So if you had a pan that went from left to right, your next shot can go left to right as well to keep that kind of story transition going. It's a good way to tell a visual story. It's super easy. Definitely recommend it. Now the second movement that I would recommend when it comes to straight out of the box easy slider movements is a push in or a pull out kind of shot. Realistically, these work really well in 2 ways. Either you're starting pretty far away from your subject, you're setting your subject in the environment and then pushing in to show detail to the subject, or vice versa, you're starting really close, showing that detail of the subject, and then by backing away, you're setting that subject in the scene. This is super easy, super helpful because like I said, you're either showing detail or giving that hero shot, both of which are very useful when it comes to those content creators and content creation and stuff like that. Anything that deals with making a video, you're either trying to show detail a lot of times or you're trying to get like an environment. So this motion is super easy. Realistically, all it takes is setting the camera parallel to the bars of the slider and then just letting it push in and pull out. Now the third super easy straight out of the box kind of camera shot that I would add to a movement when it comes to sliders is a left or right pan, but add just a little bit of spice and give it that center focus. So that way it turns a left to right pan into almost like a half moon tilt. Now, of course, there are other brands that will do generally the same idea, and some do it even better by adding in a viewfinder kind of situation with the slider itself, but typically these systems are super expensive. Instead, with this kind of system that I'm using, it does the same thing generally by using a manual bar in the center of the actual slider. So just to make that make sense, let me show you what I'm talking about. So I wanted to use this clip of this VHS footage that I shot because I just love VHS and I wanted to use it anyway because I thought it would spice up the video a little bit. But realistically, you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. There's essentially a bar in the center of the slider which allows you to adjust a knob, and then based on how far you want to move it is how focused or center focused that camera will stay along the travel. So essentially you're moving the camera still left to right in a normal pan situation, but because this bar has a tilt to it, you can still keep the center of the lens kind of pointed in the center of where your subject would be. So realistically, it gives you that pan, that tilt on top of the fact that it's sliding back and forth. It's giving you that effect where your subject in the front is standing still, but that kind of that background movement is what you're looking at. Kind of like this shot. So realistically here I'm kind of centered, but then you also see the rotation of the background. So it's still showing you kind of generally a dynamic shot, but it also keeps me focused. Now this is one that you also might want to think about because you're going to have to play around with this a little bit more than probably the Rhino slider because it is a manual kind of adjustment. But realistically, for as affordable as this slider system is, I think it's really awesome and one of the most fun and most useful kind of camera slider shots that I think for like bang for the buck, it's just amazing. So that's why it has to make it to this list, honestly. So that's what I have for you. Those are the 3 most common straight out of the box kind of tips that I would give for somebody that's going to get into a new slider. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you've liked some of the content that I put out here. Hopefully you've enjoyed kind of the cut scenes, some of this movement. Hopefully it kind of shows you generally some of these ideas and how you can implement them into your next piece of content. For me personally, I love this setup. I totally enjoyed making this video and giving it kind of a dynamic factor that hasn't been in my other videos. So I will absolutely continue to use something like this for future videos. But now's the time, if you haven't already, please go down to the comments down below and let me know what you think about either this setup or some of the ideas that I mentioned here, whether it's like you liked it or you think there's better ones. I would love to know all that kind of stuff. And plus, anyone that comes and checks out this video would love your feedback as well, especially if you're like an avid user of kind of sliders. If you have some really good insights, I know people down in the comments would love to see it. So make sure you do that. And also, while you're down there in the comments, hopefully you will check out my links for all my social platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all the usuals. They're all in the same place as always. So go hit me up there as well. Let me know what you're thinking about on those platforms. I super appreciate that as well. And beyond all of that, I'm going to hit you with my typical peace out, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for checking this one out.